My name's Daniel. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, not far from the Catskills. Nothing ever really happened where I lived, just farms, woods, and the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I've never really believed in ghosts or anything paranormal. I always thought there was a logical explanation for everything. But what happened during the summer of 2012 changed that forever. I was 17 and staying at my grandparents' house for the break. They had this old farmhouse built in the late 1800s, and they lived there alone ever since I could remember. My grandfather had recently passed away, so it was just my grandmother in the house now. I wanted to keep her company for a few weeks. My room was upstairs at the far end of the hall. It used to be a guest room, barely touched since the 80s. The wallpaper was this faded floral pattern, and the bed had one of those creaky metal frames. The first few nights were fine, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, on the fifth night, something happened that still gives me chills. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone. It was around 1:30 in the morning. The house was dead quiet except for the ticking of this old grandfather clock downstairs. As I started drifting off to sleep, I heard what sounded like whispering. At first I thought it was the TV from my grandma's room, but she always went to bed early and didn't even keep a TV in there. I sat up, holding my breath, trying to listen. The whispering stopped. I figured maybe I imagined it. I laid back down and pulled the blanket over my head. Then I heard it again, louder this time. It wasn't words, it was more like soft, breathy sounds, almost like someone muttering nonsense right in my ear. I shot out of bed and turned on the light. The room was empty. The door was shut, windows locked. My heart was racing, but I tried to laugh it off and told myself I was just tired. I left the light on and tried to sleep. Eventually, I must have passed out. The next morning at breakfast, I casually asked my grandma if she'd ever heard anything strange in that room. She paused and said, "That used to be your Uncle Ron's room." I didn't know much about Uncle Ron, just that he died young, before I was born. She told me he passed away in that room after a long battle with cancer. I asked if anything weird ever happened in there, and she just said, "That room always had a feeling to it, but it's probably just old house noises, honey." That night I went to bed with the lamp on. I was halfway between asleep and awake when I felt the blanket slowly slide down my body. I opened my eyes and saw the covers bunching at my feet like someone had pulled them off me. I sat straight up. No one was there. My door hadn't opened. The air felt freezing all of a sudden, and I could see my breath. Then the whispering started again. This time I could tell it was coming from the corner of the room, near the closet. The closet door was cracked open. I had definitely closed it earlier. I grabbed my phone and turned in the flashlight. The light hit the closet, and I swear to God, I saw something move. It looked like the outline of a person, just a dark shape, barely visible. But it was there, and then it was gone, like it sank back into the darkness. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I kept every light on and sat in the hallway until sunrise. I didn't tell my grandma this time. I didn't want to freak her out. The following night, I decided to record audio while I slept, just in case. I used an app on my phone that records only when it hears sound. The next morning, I had 7 recordings. The first few were normal, me shifting in bed, snoring, a distant clock chime. But the fourth one, around 3:12 a.m., was different. There was whispering again. But this time it was clear. A male voice, low and gravelly, said, "Get out." My blood ran cold listening to it. I played it over and over. It was real. It wasn't some glitch or background noise. Someone or something had said those words in my room. I showed it to my friend Tyler later that day. He's the kind of guy who laughs at everything, but after he heard it, he just stared at me and said, "Dude, you need to leave that house." I didn't want to leave my grandma alone, but I also didn't want to be in that room another night. That evening, I moved my things to the downstairs living room. I slept on the couch with the TV on, lights on, everything. Nothing weird happened. But the next morning, when I went upstairs to grab a sweatshirt, the bedroom door was wide open, and inside, written on the wall above the bed, in the dust of the old wallpaper, were the words, "This is still mine." I stared at it for what felt like an hour. No one had been in that room, and the door had definitely been closed. That was the last straw. I packed up my things and told my grandma I had to head back early. She didn't ask many questions. Maybe she knew. Maybe she had her own stories she didn't want to talk about. I haven't been back since, but every so often I think about that whisper, that voice telling me to get out, and I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't listened. All I know is this: something was in that room with me, and it didn't want me there.